Hi, everyone. I'm Linda Brubaker, and this is the last job search lunch and learn of the year. Can't believe that the year is already over. I'm a job search coach, and I've been a dedicated job search coach for the last 6 years, coming to this role as a previous recruiter, an executive headhunter, a hiring manager, talent acquisition manager, and HR business partner, so that I look at job search from all sides of the desk. And I'm happy to help you all in your job search as we move forward. We're going to be very clear about making sure that we get as many of our questions answered as we can. What I'd like to do first, though, is make use of that chat. Use that chat as a way of introducing yourself, a little bit about who you are, specifically what it is you're looking for, what your target job title is, and target job area, as in location, as in whether or not you want to work in Arizona or California or Illinois or remotely, so that we have an idea and we can do some networking with you at a later stage if we see something that looks like it's a good fit for you. So please do that, and that really makes it easy. Okay. Also include a clickable link to your LinkedIn URL. And it's okay during these sessions to go ahead and connect with each other. Now, LinkedIn has restricted the number of connection messages you can have if you have a free account. And I have a free account, which means that I am limited to no more than 5 connection messages a month. Okay, and I know, Sue, you said yesterday that you hadn't seen that hit you yet. It's hit me.
Well, I just want to also interject. Kevin Turner put a comment on the replay. I couldn't watch live what you were on their review. And he said they're alternating 5, 10, 15, and 25. And he also said he thinks it might be like rolling admissions now. I put a comment on Jeff's thing this morning because I'm still not having it. And I just sent a request to someone here and it didn't get to me. And it's just funny because I usually get them earlier than other people. So you never know, but I recommend what you just said. If you're on a meeting with someone and it isn't 150 people, you can look around and get the names, you see the chat, then connect and don't waste your personalized message on the meeting related person.
Exactly right. And there's another reason for you all to join our private group, because you can message someone in the private group and ask them to connect there and use a group message rather than one of your LinkedIn message requests. And if you're in that private group, you know that we're all looking for the same things. So it's an easy way for you to just send that connection request. Even without a message, people will see that you're part of that group. Okay, maybe post something, hey guys, I'm going to try and connect with all of you. It's a great way of doing it, and it doesn't waste those. And yes, Sue, I know that there's that rolling 5, 10, 15, 20. Okay, mine hit just the beginning of this week, and I am limited to 5. So there are ways we're going to try and work around it. But for right now, that's what it is. So connecting here or while you're already in one of those groups is a great way to do it. Okay, this is your time, guys. It's an Ask You Anything. Sue, would you like to introduce yourself, since I call on you off when you help me out by giving us some of your answers and so on. Please introduce yourself.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Sue Griffey. I'm known as Sue Mentors in the virtual world, and some of you have seen me before with my pom-poms. I'm a mentor with pom-poms to celebrate everything, whether you consider it a win or not. Linda and I probably do consider lots of things wins. I have a global mentoring practice. I actually work with people from around the world, and occasionally I'm able to help out with global questions. But also I think I'm the oldest experienced rich person on this call. I'm gathering lately. Thank you. And I'm just going to write a message for those of you about how to make a clickable link so you can help us help you connect more easily. So thanks. Linda lets me join these calls. Other people do, so that we experts can share our knowledge, like we just did about how many people have the rollout of the new restrictions yet. Thanks, Linda.
No, thank you. And one of the things that's important for everybody to know is that nobody has all the answers. So when I say that we'll try and get you answers, if we can't answer your question today, I'll make sure that we try and get you an answer one way or another. Okay. And we'll reach out to be able to do that. You can also give answers yourself and help us out either in the chat or by coming online. Okay. Sounds good. The floor is open. Who's got the first question? Go ahead, Shauna.
Okay, hi, I'm Shana. I'm coming from Chicago. So my question is, how do you find recruiters or headhunters or whatever you want to call them in like kind of specific areas? So I'm looking at like healthcare, pharma, wellness, those types of areas. How do I find recruiters in those fields?
So first, let me dispel a myth, and that is that a recruiter is going to work for you. They don't. So when you're talking about trying to find recruiters in specific areas, we used to say, I remember years ago when I was in job search, that I would go out and find that list and send my resume to those people and say, hey, let's talk. What can you find for me? The way that an outside recruiter gets paid these is only by making a placement. And given how busy they are and how much of a push there is to make sure that they get those placements too, so that they can get paid, they're only interested in talking to people these days who match some of the roles that they have. So reaching out specifically to recruiters in your area, like that medical area, isn't necessarily going to do what you think it will. In fact, sending a blind resume or reaching out and saying, hey, can you find something for me, is more likely to be a negative in their eyes than a positive. The best way to reach out to a recruiter, an outside recruiter, is to find a position that they have open and apply to them the same way you would for any other position. Targeted resume, targeted cover letter. But in your cover letter, one of the things you're going to say is, you post so many wonderful positions that if this one doesn't work out, I would love to have a conversation about other opportunities. And I'm happy to send a more generic resume to match some of those roles. But the first thing is to help them help you, right? So that's the first thing. Then the second thing is in terms of trying to find those, when you said medical, are medical sales, medical what?
Well, that's what I'd like to talk to someone about, I guess, as well. So I'm an international medical graduate. I'm not certified to work in the US as a doctor. I'm a family physician from Australia. And so I wanted to talk to someone about, well, if I want to get back into the workforce without doing certification and registration, what types of roles are people interested in my qualifications?
Okay.
So I've been researching online and I have a list, but I'm curious as to what's actively recruiting for my type of credential.
Okay, so that's an entirely different kind of a situation. And we can talk about that offline.
Okay.
Okay, and I can perhaps give you some ideas. I also have some connections to people doing things like medical sales, recruiting, among other things, pharma recruiting, that I might be able to put you in touch with.
Okay.
Okay, but in terms of trying to find them, take a look to see some of the jobs that you're interested in and see who's doing those recruiting roles. If they're recruiting for something in that area, go to their website, see what other positions they post. Find one that's appropriate for you, and then send in your targeted resume for that role. The other thing that you can do is you can go onto LinkedIn and do a Boolean search. Boolean meaning that you add the words "and" in capital letters in between your terms. So you can look for two things at the same time. So you could search for recruiter and pharma, or recruiter and medical, and see what pops up. Now, if you're in a free account, you may get a whole lot of results, and you can go in and you can limit the search based on location, based on hiring now, based on a variety of other terms, but it gets you started. And in a free account, it may say that there are 500 people showing up. You'll only actually be able to see 99 in a free account. That's one of their limitations. But you can do another search and change your parameters slightly and see more. But that should at least help you get started.
And is it appropriate to, let's say if all the roles that are available are like for directors or more senior positions, is it appropriate to apply to one of those roles if it's a recruiter-based role, knowing that probably you don't have that experience if you have the basic credentials, just to try and get a conversation started with that recruiter, because a lot of the positions are quite senior that are being advertised.
So remember, an outside recruiter only is interested in talking to you for the role if they think you're a good fit. Okay, because that's the only way they get paid, is when they make that placement. So I understand the idea of wanting to be able to reach out and get those initial conversations going. Some of them may, if they're willing, if they have some added time, some downtime in the process, that might be a possibility. You might even just be able to do a quick little networking call with some, or with some people in the industry. But I might, instead of reaching out to an outside recruiter for some of those roles and saying, hey, can you talk to me, see whether or not it's a good fit, I might do a little bit of informational networking with people already doing the roles that you're looking at. Okay. What kinds of things did you do to prepare yourself? And so on. In terms of applying for a job for which you're not a complete fit, go for it. If you have 65% of the things they're looking for, and we can talk about how to talk about those in a very transferable way and how they fit, don't screen yourself out. Okay. And I'll tell you, ladies, men, unfortunately, are much more proactive about doing that and not worrying about whether or not they're a full fit than we are. Don't stand in your own way. If you are truly a 65 to 70% match in terms of what those skill sets are looking for, and we can talk about the transferability of those skills, send it in. Yes, Frank.
That's because we think everything is a nail, and so we just use a hammer. Okay,
My
so
husband would get along really well.
baling wire and a hammer, that's all I need. Okay, couple things, or I should say, pick your poison, right? What are you going to do? And I'm just curious. A job gets posted. An hour and a half later, is 400 applications in there, right? I mean, and then secondly is, which is more important, I guess is what my question is. Is it more important to customize the resume, to target to the job, or to get it in quick? Because I feel like it is getting in there quick for a job you're qualified for, obviously, it is way better results than taking the time to, spend 30 minutes or whatever customizing the resume to the target list, writing a cover letter, blah, blah, blah.
Okay. So I'm going to say yes. And I know you asked me a multiple choice question or an either or question. It's not. So the first thing, Frank, is not to be scared off by the numbers that you see who have already applied to those jobs. When you're looking on LinkedIn and it says there are 512 applicants, what that really means is that 512 people clicked into the job. It does not mean that all 512 actually applied. That's number one. Number two, I would say that probably 80 or 90% of the people who apply, especially those who apply quickly, aren't qualified for the job. They're doing what we call a spray and pray. Oh, hey, this looks interesting. I'm going to go send my stuff in anyway and see whether or not something will stick. We used to call it throwing spaghetti against a wall. Don't do that. Is it important to get your information in relatively quickly? It is. But it's more important to make sure that when you're applying for a job, you're not one of the ones that I'm going to reject out of hand because I can't see how you fit. When you apply for a job, human eyes are going to be looking at that resume to make that decision as to whether or not I want to look more. But they have 2 to 9 seconds. That's really, on average, all they take to do that initial skim of your resume. So if they can't quickly see how you match that job, then they may not take the time to read further to say, yes, you are a perfect match. So what I'm recommending is that you have almost a base resume that you can tweak. You can copy and paste, you can add things out, take things out, but at the very least, customize the very top of the resume. The job title, the summary, the skills or expertise, whatever it is you want to call it, and pull out anywhere from 2 to 8 of the most significant things you've done anywhere in your career that match that job. I'm going to see those right up front. And that's going to show me why I want to read more. If you're making me do a lot of reading, I may not. Be honest with you. Okay. So your job as a job seeker is to make my job as easy as possible. So is it important to get it in quickly? Maybe. Okay. But I will tell you that recruiters are still telling us that over 80% of the responses they get are not a fit. And not even close.
By the way, I do not believe you're correct on your LinkedIn. It takes someone pressing yes on the did you apply question to count.
Does it?
Yes.
Okay. So.
At least that's my research.
And that could be, Frank. I'm welcome. You know, I don't know everything and things change all the time. So the other thing is, I'm going to recommend that you actually not apply through LinkedIn.
Yeah, I always go to the website.
Yeah. Okay. And there are a couple of reasons for that. Number one, a lot of the jobs are saying use the easy apply. Please don't. Even if you choose to apply on LinkedIn, don't use easy apply. I very rarely say don't do something. Don't do that. And the reason for that is that what that does primarily is that it sends over a copy of your LinkedIn profile. Now, your LinkedIn profile is generic, right? Your resume, you're targeting to the job. You may get a chance to upload a little something, but you can't do a whole lot. So don't do that. The other thing is that we have recently learned that your application will actually get to the recruiter, the company, faster if you do it directly through the website. So whether you see the job on LinkedIn, Indeed, another outside site, apply on the company website, and it will get to the recruiter's hands anywhere from 24 hours earlier, all the way up to a week earlier than it would going through some of those outside sites. Don't waste the time.
One more question on the easy apply. I noticed a lot of recruiters use the easy apply, to find candidates, which I find interesting. And sometimes I can't find their website.
I'm not sure what you mean by
Contingency recruiters or external recruiters.
So they may use easy apply in the sense of putting that out there if they're putting a job posting up. That doesn't mean you have to apply that way, even if it's on the posting. If you can't find them, if you can't find the job on the company's website, it's not a real job. Okay. And it may not be a real recruiter. It's another reason for going directly to the company site. Now, one of the things that is nice when you see a recruiter's name on that job posting, you can look them up on LinkedIn. You can message them directly or try and connect with them. But again, that's another of the check. Is this a real person? Check on the company's page on LinkedIn if you have any concerns, and see whether or not that person is listed as one of the employees if you look at people for that company. If they're not, that's another potential red flag. Did that help, Frank?
Yeah, I do follow that advice for the most part. The easy apply is the one. I saw one this morning. It's like, okay, who's this recruiter? Never heard of him. Look for their website, can't find it. It's like,
don't do it.
Is this real? Not real?
No, don't do it. Okay. Next question. Don't be shy.
I've got another one if no one wants to jump in. This is very, very generic question and possibly a silly question, I'm not sure. But if you want health insurance through your job for not just yourself, but your family, does that job have to be full-time, or do part-time jobs sometimes come with insurance as well?
Actually, that's a great question. There are no silly questions. So in terms of insurance, For the most part, it needs to be a full-time job. Companies define that differently. There are some companies who are starting to do that for part-time jobs, but part-time job meaning that it is normally about 30 hours a week. Maybe that break point. Contract jobs don't normally offer benefits. However, even as I say that, if the company X is hiring for a contract position, but they have hired an outside firm like, say, a Robert Half to manage that contract work staff, you will, in effect, have a dual employer. Your actual employer is company X. They're the one for whom you do the work, and they're the ones you're going to list on your resume and LinkedIn. But the employer of record would be Robert Half. They're the ones where the paycheck actually comes from. The rest of us don't care. The reason that I mention that, though, is that companies like a Robert Half, if they manage lots of contractors for various companies, may offer you the option of benefits through them. Now, they're not going to be as good as you would get through the company. They won't be as cheap as they would be through the company, but at least it gives you some of those options. Yes, Mark.
Hi. So you said before, and I think touched on what Frank said in terms of customizing the resume to the application. Is it so you have your set of skills and your experiences and you want to highlight those, but do you also want to like take the job description from the posting and incorporate the keywords into the resume? So if they list like some key phrases or obligate or criteria, is it appropriate to take those and put those in the summary or the setting and to make those stand out as well?
Absolutely. In fact, when you're customizing, you mentioned the idea of having your set of skills, and you should, but you need to pick and choose for what you put on that resume. Just because you have a skill set doesn't mean that it's going to be useful in the new job. And listing everything you can do sometimes works against you rather than for you. So for those of us who are well experienced, okay, if we remember that companies don't care about everything we can do, only what you can do for them. It used to be when we were in job search, we'd say, oh, I can do X, Y, Z plus A, B, C, and D. And isn't that great? And companies would say, hey, that's wonderful. Now what happens is they say, I need somebody who does X, Y, and Z. You say, oh, I can do X, Y, and Z plus A, B, C, and D. And they say, I don't care. The A, B, C, and D that you're adding isn't relevant to my job. So when you add those skills that don't match what I'm looking for, it says, you're old, you're not paying attention to what I really need. You may be over-experienced, which may mean that you are over-expensive. It may also mean that you're not going to be satisfied because the job that I need you to do isn't doing some of those things. The dummy on my side of the desk or the screen, the hiring manager, the recruiter, only cares about what you can do for them. So, Mark, when you're saying you have your set of skills, you absolutely do, and that's fantastic. But I only want you to include those that match the new job. So, yes, highlighting what's important for them, absolutely.
So, follow-up question to that. I have a screening call with an HR person next week. And I talked just earlier today. Yeah, thank you. I talked earlier today to an old colleague of mine who now works there. And he was, just kind of giving me some ideas of what it's like and the skills that this job does. Now, is it appropriate to send, because when I applied, I submitted a resume. Is it appropriate now to maybe revise or tweak the resume a little bit and send that on to the screener, kind of highlighting those things that are more tailored to the job, or should I just let the resume stand and highlight those things in the conversation?
Great question, actually. So there's nothing wrong with sending a follow-up resume. You can either do it for this conversation or if you feel comfortable enough highlighting them just in the conversation itself, then send a follow-up resume based not on the posting, but on the conversation itself as you move forward.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, would you send that revised resume like in a red line format to highlight
No, no,
it?
no, absolutely not.
Okay,
Okay.
great.
You say, I've had a little more time to think about the position and I'm really excited to talk to you. So what I did was I'm sending you an updated version of the resume to showcase more
Oh,
clearly what I can do for you.
so that's appropriate to do.
Yes,
Okay, great. Thank you.
you're welcome. Nikki.
Yes, hi. I was wondering, because I'm interested in switching industries, my old resume did not have any measurable metrics on the resume, and the new industry that I am interested in, and I had talked to you in the past a while ago when you were back working for the school.
Uh-huh.
And you had mentioned to me as well that it's important to have the measurable metrics on the resume. However, it's because I haven't had them and because I have been out of work for the past year as well, I don't really have those specific numbers. So I was just wondering if that's something that they're looking for, how I can include that without having it right now.
Okay. This is actually one of Sue's skill sets. So Sue, if you'd like to start there, and then I'll fill in afterwards, if that's okay. Can I pick on you?
Yes, Nikki, can you say the last bit? I sort of lost track of it because I was trying to figure out what exactly you want.
Sure. So I was in education for the past 10 years or so, and I'm looking to transition to customer success.
Oh, yeah.
And just what I've learned is that you should be including those measurable metrics on your resume, and I don't have any of those. And without completely making it up or trying to connect with former colleagues that probably don't have it, I was wondering how I can include those numbers.
I want to reassure you and everybody here that what people say when they say we need numbers, all came out of originally people who worked on commission. I'm that old. Car salesmen, realtors, those were the big areas where you had to have numbers. Most of the world, even though it doesn't seem like this on LinkedIn, is like all of us knowledge workers. Even if we provide a service, it's not as tangible as saying I made this toaster or I delivered this many cars this year. So you do have those. They don't always look like $80,000 of sales across 5 different neighborhoods, but there are ways to use words and phrases to quantify it, number one. And what I'm going to do is put a link to you, a presentation I did for Brenda Meller's LinkedIn Live-a-thon, and then for recent Mindy Stern's Accelerator Group on the second part of it, which is using evidence-based results, because you can get a lot of attention on your results by talking about what it is you produced and helped lead to the next level of the outcome, rather than what I call the laundry list, because I'm the queen of things. This is why I started mentoring, because I had to change my own habits. But instead of 7 or 8 bullets, help people see the larger contributions you're making to the goals. So I've actually worked with educators moving into different kinds of roles. You have phenomenal. Number one, anybody who can deal with kids in school can deal with customer service. Linda's shaking her head because I know
Absolutely.
she's seen this. But number two, think about the things that I call your intellectual property. Knowledge workers demonstrate a lot of our success by giving those evidence-based results and then showing something. So I don't have anything here. A document we've written, a presentation we've made, and it doesn't have to be a formal, oh, I went to a conference or whatever. Think about the ways you've communicated with different audiences. For you, Nikki, in education, all the way from every mother and frantic parent that needed something to the superintendent of schools when he came or she came for a show and tell. Those kinds of things are transferable. Transferable skills are being able to tailor curricula for special needs, for gifted and talented, for different content areas. My daughter-in-law just got pulled into teaching English to seventh graders. She hadn't done it in years, but they needed her to do that along with instructional technology. And she said, yeah, it was kind of like riding a bike. So I want you all to hear the message that, and Linda, you talk about this all the time. It is your transferable skills, but we don't have a lot of people that, like Linda and I, try to show you the how of how you do it. So let me stop there because this is something I love and can go on and on, but I'll send you to 2 very short 15-minute presentations I made. I have formulas, I have little I have a lot of examples of things on the web for both of these. So hopefully that helps. And thanks, Linda, for letting me.
No, thank you for doing that. But Sue's absolutely right. We focus in on what those transferable skills are. And yes, they're all going to ask for the measurable. If you've been in sales before, you may have those numbers. The rest of us don't. But being able to demonstrate a result. Did this, here's what the result was. Here's how it was used. Is absolutely not only good enough, but it will get your foot in the door for many of these jobs. If you're talking about customer success, a lot of that is that training mindset, that being able to use different learning modalities, being able to adapt the message to how somebody else needs to learn, and being able to provide it in lots of different formats, adapting on the fly as you're reading the room to see whether or not they're getting it. So even though they're asking for numbers, it's like that 65% rule, remember? We're focused in on what you can bring, not necessarily the specifics of what they're looking for in the sense of, I need that unicorn. I need those numbers. Okay, other ways to demonstrate. And we will do more talking about how to phrase those after the first of the year. Okay, I'm looking to see who was next. I think it was you, John.
Yes, thank you. So I've been a salesperson for 30 years in the technology industry. So I started selling PCs. Those of you who are those of you who know what that is, you know what I mean.
Okay,
First,
so John, I want to stop you for a minute. My very first professional job was with a company called Digital Equipment Corporation. Do you remember them?
Sure.
Okay, so when you're talking PCs, I was back old enough that I was there when they decided that they really didn't want to get involved in PCs. Okay, so they came late to the party. So yeah, I understand what PCs are. Sorry.
No problem. So, and I have management positions. I decided I didn't like that. I've been an individual contributor for 15 years. Large companies like Amazon, Cisco, AT&T, and I agree. So I've been trying the LinkedIn resume thing, and it works sometimes. But what I've learned to do is go to the website, as one of my peers suggested, and dig into what they're looking for. Like I was doing one today. Gave me a question: how much experience do you have in the capital markets, which is like brokers and stuff? And I'm like, yeah, I have none. So this isn't a good job for me. That's kind of a barrier. That's a hurdle. So, but most of the time, or I say, you go to Microsoft or Cisco, you don't usually get hey, we got your appointment or your application, and we're eager to read it, and we'll contact you. But some of the smaller ones do, and I've gotten to the second level of interviews, and I think at the last one, my experience with enterprise customers didn't fit with this organization's focus on smaller organizations. And I tried to talk my way through that, and they gave me but they did at least reach out and say, hey, we're not a good fit for this role, but keep us in mind and keep contacting us. And I want to tell you one more thing. I applied for a job at a company and I really wanted to go work there, and they chose somebody else. And I'm like, oh, that's fine. And then they couldn't negotiate the compensation for that person. So the hiring manager called me back.
Oh,
and
that's
said,
great.
hey, are you still interested? He goes, John, I want you because you want to work here. Like you've seen what we do, what we can do. You've expressed this to us. So are you open to another interview? And oddly enough, I was at the Arlington Park racetrack on a Friday afternoon. But I told him that, hey, perfect, let's talk next week. and now he's a good friend and mentor, not a mentor really, but he helps me find roles, or he tells me where to look, or we only live 15 miles apart. And by the way, I'm in the Chicago area as well. Somebody mentioned they were too.
Mhm.
But I posted my I'm not good with Zoom and hitting enter, and they're truncated.
That's
But I am
okay.
looking for a role similar to my past roles. Like I said, I worked for some large organizations dealing with enterprise customers, but I'm open to. I'm almost thinking like my world is flooded. I mean, uh, every organization in my space has laid off people dramatically. Amazon 9,000. And they weren't all in the warehouses. Our organization got hit too, and that was me. And it keeps going. Like more got laid off recently, and so it's I would be open actually to thinking about, do I need to stay in technology, or do I think my transferable skill is communication, recommendation, persuasion,
Mhm.
and that translates to just about any role. So we'll see what happens. Keep moving forward. It's been a while, but I talk to my peers who are in the same spot, and they are struggling too, because there's only so many positions, and there's so many of us, because our companies got greedy in 2020. Oh, we need to
Mhm.
hire 10,000 people. And then, well, COVID doesn't last forever, so I will stop there, and am open to any questions or comments, or connect me on LinkedIn. I know 2 or 3 people already have, and I appreciate that.
That's wonderful. So a couple of things. Yes, your skills are transferable outside of the software industry. Yes, unfortunately, I'm seeing layoffs continue. I wish I could say that they're not going to, but my prediction is that at least through Q1, maybe Q2, they're going to continue. Okay. I'm not sure, honestly, when they're going to stop. Companies are calling it right sizing. That was a term that we put into place many years ago, but it's the same thing, right? They're redefining what it is they want, what they need, and what they can afford. So yes, those are going to continue.
I agree. And I've also found, speaking with other coaches, that they do that sometimes to meet a goal. Like they can go to the street and say, hey, we laid off X, it's going to reduce our cost by Y. And then next year or quarter will look better. But then they backfill them, so it's kind of like a give and take. And I don't hesitate to apply for a company that has recently laid people off because of that. And
Mhm.
eventually they're going to need more people back, just like recruiters, right? They're all whacking all the recruiters at the companies, so they need contract recruiters. And eventually they're going to need them back, or backfill
Okay.
with people like yourself. Yeah. Okay.
Right. But you're right. So one of the things we are seeing though, and you're going to see it, you see it now, you're going to see it, unfortunately, near the end of any quarter. It seems to be taking place more often than that, though, is that companies will not only go through this process of downsizing and then rehiring, but they may also post ghost jobs specifically to make themselves look good, not just at the end of the quarter in terms of we're lowering our hiring our headcount, but many times we're finding, and this is a terrible practice, that companies will post a ghost job that they never really intend to fill, because from the stockholders' standpoint, from the analyst's standpoint, it looks as if they are planning to grow.
I never thought of that.
I wish I could say it doesn't happen. It does, and unfortunately, it happens more often than we would like. It has become almost a standard practice over the last year and a half. So
How do you identify that? Is there any way?
it's really hard. So one of the things you can do is, if you see the same exact job posted over and over and over again, that's a clue. If you see the same job in the same posting posted in 12 different locations, or it's posted as, the same job in 12 different locations, that could also be a clue. It could be real. It's hard to tell.
I guess if you're online and you see that, and you can upload your resume. It never hurts, right? It's a simple. And by the way, I'll stop now, but I'll throw one more out there. Are cover letters really read? I mean, don't you really want to see my past history before you read a cover letter?
So I will tell you that cover letters are one of those controversial areas in the area of hiring and recruiting. I will not tell you that everybody reads them. That's absolutely true. I will tell you that for the many of us who do read them, your cover letter can make the difference between whether or not I bring you in for an interview or not. Your resume is generic, or at least is objective, let's put it that way, right? It is specifically targeted to what that skill is looking for, what the job is looking for. But the cover letter becomes you. A good cover letter does not repeat what's in your resume. A good cover letter tells me why you want this job in this company. What is it about it that speaks directly to you? What is it that you bring that nobody else does because of your journey? If all you're doing is repeating what's in your resume, don't include it. Don't do me any good.
Thanks for that observation, Ms. Dolgate. And I believe on the last session I attended, one of our peers was saying, "Hey, the cover letters work. You know, I'm really good at that because it speaks like me, not just a resume is just to like stats, right? Here's what I did. Here's how much I made the company, or here's how I helped the organization if you're not in sales, and this happened because of, right?" So I guess I might as well try it because what I've been doing isn't working.
And I agree. Cover letters truly do work. And yes, not everybody will read them, but if you were talking, John, about being called back, for a job that you didn't get selected for the first time, many people actually will get called for a job just because your information is in my database. Right? That's what an applicant tracking system is. It's a database. And a good recruiter, a good company will search their database for other candidates. When I'm doing that, or if I've got 1,000 resumes, yes, my eyes are going to look at them, but I may use that database to help sort those resumes to see which ones I want to see first. What I like about every single applicant tracking system that I've ever used is that I can do a Boolean search of that database to find potential candidates. And when it does that, so people for me to take a look at first, doesn't screen people out, but it may help me see them first. But it will find those cover letter words as well as the resume words. And when I've used them, what they do, and granted, I haven't used them in about 5 years, is that they used to give me a highlighted version on screen, literally a yellow highlighter marker is what it looked like, with those words that I put in, whether they were in the cover letter or the resume, as a way of helping me to focus quickly on who you are and what it's all about.
Thank you for that guidance. I think that means I can have a fairly kind of not generic, but a resume I can use with other organizations and not have to keep redoing my resume.
No.
But use a cover letter and put keywords in there.
Both. Absolutely both. Okay.
All right, cool.
Because not everybody's going to read the cover letter. That's true. Okay.
Yeah.
And some people like me, I read the resume first and decide whether or not I want to read the cover letter.
Yeah, my coach says she goes from the bottom up, like when she sees the resume.
Okay.
And I'm like, I don't understand how that works, but okay.
No, most of us don't. Most of us will look just really the first third of a page to decide whether we want to read more.
Okay. I'll put the floor to somebody else.
Okay. Michelle, you've had your hand up for a while.
Good morning, everyone, or afternoon for some. I am seeking a job as a director, senior director, VP of digital engineering or mobile engineering, because that's where I'm skilled in the retail. I did put more detail in the chat, so if you want to connect with me, please do. But Linda, my question is I came across 2 roles, in fact, that I had previously applied to. different roles though, because I did check, I went back and I looked at the cover letters and to see what they were. My question is how is my resume now different and cover letter now different seen in the application tracking systems? And do they compare them to see, what I've changed or, how I have enhanced it for the role?
Okay, so remember, an applicant tracking system is a database. It is not something that's going to screen you in or screen you out. Depending upon the company, okay, if you can set up your own account, you can add a new resume or edit a resume, meaning take one out and add a new one in anytime you apply. What I will see in the applicant tracking system is how many positions you have applied for.
And is that a bad reflection on someone?
It depends. If you're applying to 12 different positions and they're all very different, okay, then it's really, you just want to work here. You don't care what the job is.
No,
But if the
these
job,
are the same, but similar.
right. If the jobs are similar and making use of the same skills kinds of sets, then yes, absolutely target it for that job, put in a cover letter for that job and go ahead and do it. Okay. Because as a recruiter, what I will see is what you specifically send me.
And is it possible that the recruiter may have been different for the previous one?
Absolutely. Okay. Now, if you've ever spoken, here's another insider trick. If you have ever spoken to somebody in that recruiting office, in that field, if they're doing their job well, they should put a note into your file. Okay. So for example, with John, if it hadn't been the hiring manager calling you back, it could have been somebody else from the company who'd looked and said, hey, this guy was a close second. He's got what we're looking for. He just wasn't doing that one role. We should call him back. That note will probably be in that file. And any recruiter in the company can see that. So that's a good thing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. By the way, if you interview with a company and get turned down, I highly recommend sending a thank you note after that turn down. Okay. We've all heard about sending a thank you note after an interview. Send a thank you note after a turn down if you've spoken with someone. Because what you're doing is now you're making yourself stand out. Not just thank you for your time, but I was so excited to hear about X, Y, and Z and all the wonderful things that you're doing. Okay. And it made me even more excited to continue to stay in touch, if that's okay, and perhaps look for other roles, because I'd like to be able to bring X, Y, and Z to what you do in A, B, and C. It is very short. But if you're saying, can I, I'd like to be able to keep in touch. Now, if you haven't already connected with that recruiter on LinkedIn, you can do so. You can send that message because you've got that implied permission. You can also, if you haven't already done so, send that connection request to the hiring manager or anyone else that you've spoken with. It gives you those opportunities to find additional responsibilities, find additional roles there, because now you're a known commodity. And you never know where that can go. And then the third thing that thank you note after a turn down does is that it gives you perhaps the in, if you will, to then reach back out to the recruiter or the hiring manager. I really had I really enjoyed the conversation. You're doing X, Y, and Z, and that's wonderful. I'm wondering, would you be willing to spare 5 or 10 minutes and help me to learn a little more? How can I better prepare for a role like this, either here or elsewhere in the future? Not what did I do wrong? It's not asking for a specific feedback on the interview, but it goes back more to the background and so on, and that you'll be amazed. Not everybody's going to get back to you, but that is the best way I've ever found for people to get feedback after that interview, as well as to keep your name in the forefront. I've had several people not only use that technique, but then been reached out to again, not just for that same position, but for other positions within that company because of that relationship that they've built up and that knowledge that you really want to make that difference for the company and bring what you've got. And they've gotten not only interviews, but offers in jobs that they may never have applied for initially. So it truly works. And again, what do you have to lose? Right? They can not answer, or they can give you some great information, and you can build a great relationship. Okay. We're actually at the end of our hour, but because it's the last one of the year, I'm willing to stay on a little longer if there are additional questions. I have added the link to the private group in the chat. I'm going to do it again. Okay. In that private group on LinkedIn, okay, private group on LinkedIn means that it is not visible to anyone else on LinkedIn other than the people in the group. You cannot really search for the group. If you and I are connected, then I can invite you. And I often will go through the list of people who've registered for this and invite people. But we have to be a first level connection for me to invite you. It's another reason for you to connect with me, guys. But you can request being added to the group, even if we aren't connected. I will always check to make sure that you have registered for this program, whether you're here or not, before admitting you into the group. I want to make sure that everyone who's there has the same goals, understands that same privacy issue, and is there to support each other. So that said, once you're in the group, introduce yourself. Tell us more about you and what you're looking for so that we can help you out. If you have questions, you can ask them there too. And I will periodically, if I find a good question there that hasn't been answered elsewhere, I'll either answer it in the group, or I may use it as a LinkedIn post or turn it into one of these sessions. So there are great opportunities to go in and do it. Another thing that you can do in that private group, and again, you have to be a first level connection, is that you can ask somebody to endorse you for several skills. Nobody else on LinkedIn is going to see that you're doing that. So it's a great opportunity to share information, to support one another in a variety of different ways. So I highly recommend that you do that. And I am not as quick in terms of adding these video links to the group, but I'm getting better at it. Okay. Yes, Frank.
Well, since no one else is asking a question, I
Yes,
thought I'd come
please.
back. So let's come back to that ATS thing. I was running through my head here. What I've seen in recruiters, and so I've worked on the periphery of the HR side and recruitment side, but never worked in talent acquisition. So I am curious about this, though. The ATS receives applications when you post a job, and so I believe they're chronologically stored, right? Which is my point about getting in there first. Because again, if I'm a recruiter, internal recruiter, not an external recruiter, internal recruiter, I am scanning these things and trying to come up with, say, 10 qualified people. And the sooner I can get those 10 like qualified, schedule something with them, cut it down to say 6 or 7, run that by the hiring manager. Which of these guys do you want to talk to, or ladies? And then, they choose 3 or 4, or however many, and that interview goes, right? And that's how the process works, which was what my point was about trying to get in there first. So I kind of want to hear from the recruiter side. Is that the way you would do it? Or would you, because what I heard you saying is like you'd use a you'd close, the period of application goes through, I don't know, 2 weeks, closes off, and then you would do a Boolean search and then start looking at all of them. If I were me, I would never do that just because I can't think of a less efficient process.
So as a recruiter, your job is to find the best candidate. That's absolutely true. But as a recruiter, I get notified every time an application hits. I will look at all of those applications. Now, am I going to put a time limit on it? Yes. Especially because so many of the applications that come through, Frank, are absolutely unqualified. They're just throwing it out there. I don't use, remember that applicant tracking system is an applicant tracking system.
Mm-hmm.
It is not an applicant screen out system.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, may I use it to say I'm going to take the first 300 resumes that come through and decide which ones I'm going to look at first? That doesn't mean I'm going to stop looking before I reach the end of those 300.
So if you got 15 qualified, you would go through all 300.
I would probably at least do a quick scan. FOMO, right? Recruiters have it too. Fear of missing out. Yeah, I have 15 here, but there might be that number 30 down there who's even better than one of the ones in my pile.
Hmm.
Are they going to put a time limit on it? Probably, at least for that first sort. Yes. Depending upon the organization, they may do a rolling interview pile. Okay, like rolling admissions at a college. So,
Gotcha.
right, Al, you know what this is, right? So when the resume comes in, I'm going to take a look at it and I'm going to hit my quota of that 15 and then I'm done, right? There are some companies, I will be honest with you, that will probably do that. Most of them, however, will say, I'm going to take a look to see what I have in the first week, do a quick scan of all of those so that I'm not missing out on anyone, and then make my decisions. And I may do it in a manual sort, right? This pile, but I'm looking at it on screen. So I may just put my little save mark on it, or might make myself a note. So there are lots of different ways of doing it from a recruiter standpoint. Those ATS systems may make it easier to do it that way. And I'm not going to tell you that everyone will do the wait until they get X number and then start looking. But a good recruiter normally.
Hmm. Yeah, because I mean, their job is to fill it with the right person quickly, usually, right?
And that's
I mean,
absolutely right.
Yeah, I'm in process with the University of California. One of the jobs I applied for was in September, just FYI. I mean, this is
Yeah.
like, so much for quickly.
All right. So I'm going to top you. I had
Uh-oh.
one person who applied for a job in November, did not get an interview, wasn't even called for an interview until the following December.
Get out. 13 months?
Now, by that point, she'd moved on, obviously.
Yeah, right. Of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's that. Now I'm going to make one change to what I said in terms of the looking at all of them first. If I am an outside contingency recruiter, okay, headhunter, executive search consultant, whatever it is you want to call it, I'm going to really look at the ones as they come in, because I'm fighting against a whole bunch of other contingency recruiters to place that person. So it's not just that I want to have the right person, but I want to get my person in before somebody else does. So especially if you're looking at an outside recruiter hiring for that role, get it in as fast as you can.
All right. So internal, maybe not as important. External is important.
But
Fair
even
enough.
internal, I would still do it relatively quickly. But remember, one of the reasons that I'm waiting is, especially, let's say I posted it on Indeed or I posted it on LinkedIn, those resumes aren't going to get to me the same day that you send it. So if you send me your resume through LinkedIn or you send me your resume through Indeed,
Mhm.
okay, it's not going to get to me as fast as it would if you sent it directly to me at the
Off
company.
the website. Mhm. Okay. It's interesting insight from an inside recruiter. That's curious.
At one point, I thought about calling it Confessions of a Headhunter, but yes. Okay. All right. So I did put the link not only to me, but I put the link to the private group in there several times. Okay. Please connect with me if you have not. I put the link to, let's see, what else did I put in there? So if you'd like to have a quick little 20-minute chat, we can do that too. Okay. So that I can find out more about your job search and we can talk about the way I can help. Looking for that link. Maybe. There we go. So I offer these sessions. I'm going to turn off the recorder, by the way.